Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this edition of LeaderTalks lecture series of Kerala Management Association. Before we start our official proceedings, may I request all of you to be seated, close your eyes, and pray for a minute so that all of us remain good, healthy, and peaceful. Thank you, and once again, a very good evening to each one of you who have assembled here online on the Zoom platform, as well as those who are watching it live on YouTube platform. Good to see that we have close to 75 people online already, and I'm sure by the time our speaker takes the mic, we will have much more attending this very special meeting which we have today. This is the seventh Leader Talks lecture of the year, in the sense the KMA year. Since the time we have had our inaugural event in November by none other than the top executive of our state, the Chief Secretary, Dr. Biswas Mehta, and the Chairman of LIC, Mr. M.R. Kumar, addressing us, we have had 6 Leader Talk sessions till now with eminent leaders like Naresh Kumar Pinisetti, Dr. Santosh Rangnekar, Dr. Shivarama Prasad, Dr. Vinod Chandran, Dr. Sandeep Krishnan, and on the 5th of January, that is this week, as the first event of the calendar, we have had the brand new mayor, the respectful mayor of Cochin City, Advocate Anil Kumar, addressing us and revealing his plans for the 5-year tenure. We also had 2 StartCon, or the startup panel discussions, one with Mr. Sujit Bhaskaran of Gigs Board India and Ms. Fauzi Nizam of Cutie Pie Cakes, and the second one with Mr. Joy Sebastian, who founded the online conferencing solution and won accolades from the Government of India, the V-Console solution, and Mr. George Sakaria, who founded X-Travel Money. And our KMA Women Managers Forum activities also had started with a panel discussion of decorated speakers, leading a discussion on the topic, glass ceilings for women leaders, myth or reality. We've also seen the new revamped and recreated KMA News magazine released by our editorial team led by Vice President A. Balakrishnan. In fact, for the last 2 months, we've come out with 2 issues. If any member here has not seen or received the print version of the first issue, and if you wish to receive the subsequent issues, please get in touch with KMA office to get your address included in the mailing list. The second issue is in dispatch mode and will reach you all in a couple of days' time. Please remember to send in your comments and feedback to the editor to help us make the magazine even better. Today, we have with us a celebrated leader, eloquent speaker, proud son of Kerala, one who held the national flag high as its ambassador and now returned to his homeland after completing such a fulfilling and distinguished career spanning 34 years in the Indian Foreign Service, Sri Venu Rajamony, IFS Retd. I've heard him and had the privilege of hosting him at various forums in Rotary, and I take it as a proud privilege to have him here today while I'm presiding the affairs at KMA as its president. Unlike the usual lecture sessions, this is going to be more of a chat mode, where our program committee chair, past president S.R. Nair, is going to engage Sri Venu Rajamony in a conversation mode where we will hear from him about his engagements, experiences, and learnings. And our audience also will get to pose their questions to interact with him here on this online platform. Let me, on behalf of the Managing Committee at Kerala Management Association and all of us present here, wholeheartedly welcome Sri Venu Rajamony to this edition of Leader Talks lecture series. We have some of our past presidents, Senior Vice President Nirmala Lilly, Program Committee Chair S.R. Nair, Vice President Balakrishnan, other Managing Committee members of Kerala Management Association and other local management associations, student members, many invited guests, and members of the media present here. Let me welcome you all to this evening and wish you all a very meaningful session ahead. As always, please take a minute out by the end of the session to fill in our feedback form, which would help us in making our events and programs even better and more useful to you. Feedback form link will pop up in the chat area and you can fill it up in a minute or so. Now to introduce our chief guest of the evening and to engage him in an interactive session, may I request Program Committee Chair and former President of KMA, S.R. Nair, to take charge. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Madam. Kind of you. Chairman of the session today and chief guest, Ambassador Venu Rajamony. I am just reading out his abridged CV or resume. In fact, really, if one has to start going, it may be by itself, it will be a very long one. So I have abridged to actually in front of you to present before you. Mr. Venu Rajamony is an Indian diplomat belonging to the Indian Foreign Service. Until recently, he was the ambassador of India to the Netherlands, from where he had superannuated. Before this, he was a press secretary to the President of India, late Sri Pranab Mukherjee. Mr. Venu Rajamony holds a degree in law from Mahatma Gandhi University and a master's degree on international studies from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He began his career as a journalist, earning a reputation for rigorous investigation and comprehensive reportage. Later, Mr. Rajamony joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1986 and has served Indian missions in Hong Kong, Beijing, Geneva, Washington, D.C., as well as the Ministry of External Affairs in New Delhi. Mr. Venu Rajamony's tenure as the Consul General of India in Dubai from 2007 to 2010 marked a very high point of the relations between India and UAE. Mr. Rajamony is an author, a very prolific speaker, keynote address speaker, and he had traveled to more than 100 countries of the world. As a President Secretary, he brought unbridled enthusiasm in Rashtrapati Bhavan's outreach program, information outreach program. Sir, on behalf of, though Madhav had already welcomed you, on behalf of everybody, once again, a great welcome to you, Ambassador Rajamony. Yeah, sir. If actually, if one has to really interview and get the, it may take hours and hours together. But then we'll try to make it as crispy and also as content-wise as important as possible. Okay. Now, yeah, it is an interesting thing. While before I go to start, I think there is I just read in the paper about a telegram love affair of Mr. Mr. Venu Rajamony. I think I'll tell you this. Actually, Mr. Rajamony was learning at Jawaharlal University, and his would-be Ms. Saroj Pant also, Thapa also was there, and they were friends. And then he came back to Kerala to do his law, as well as then he joined the Indian Express. And those days, and I'm saying the early 80s, okay, there was no proper telephone conversation. Letters will take long time. They started their communication by telegram method, actually. So it's a very, very innovative, but very contemporary way of, communicating with each other. Eventually, that led to him marrying the lady at Kochi, and the couple had celebrated 35 years of wonderful married life very recently. And in fact, that again is a wonderful thing. They went to the same temple as they got married. It was a very personal affair, very limited people attending the marriage, because you understand, it's a love affair from all the way from Darjeeling to Kochi. That is the distance between that, actually. So it was a very solemn, small affair. And they have celebrated their 35th anniversary by going to the same temple. So wish you long years, wonderful times ahead as a family person as well. Okay. So I think, I will start with,
if I can just clarify.
Yes, sir.
Since you raised the telegram issue.
Yeah.
Number one, we had met each other and we were in love with each other.
Yeah.
But the tough job I had on Telegram, and somebody did ask me, did you propose on Telegram? I said, no, it was not a proposal on Telegram.
Yeah.
I had to get her to run away from home on Telegram. So it was a far more difficult task. And
the advice going by Telegram to her saying that, okay, get off.
Run.
Oh my God. Okay.
And sometimes when you meet today's youngsters,
yes,
you wonder if they can even imagine the world in which I guess most of us have lived,
Yes.
where let alone mobile phones, we did not have the internet, we did not have STDs, the days before subscriber trunk dialing,
yes,
when there was only trunk call.
Yes.
And you had to book a call
and wait for hours together.
Exactly. Sometimes for a day.
Yes.
And imagine when it used to be so difficult to connect from Trivandrum to Cochin or Cochin to Chennai or to Bangalore, how difficult it would have been to connect a trunk call from Cochin to Darjeeling.
That is right.
It had to go through multiple exchanges. I had to first connect it to Chennai, Chennai to Calcutta, Calcutta to wherever she was in Darjeeling. And so just the wait for the telephone call would be about a month, about a day or more.
Yes.
Sometimes over an entire weekend. And on the final location when you get through, you don't know who all are listening to it.
Right.
There are 3-4 telephone exchanges very eagerly trying to find out what the hell is happening.
You feel like a telephone operator.
So I had to, luckily, I think in one of my Facebook posts, I mentioned this.
Yeah.
I have been very lucky to have wonderful friends.
Yes.
And I had one good friend who was in the left camp, and I had one good friend who was in the Congress camp.
Yeah.
So early morning till afternoon, all the Congress union guys in the telephone exchange would try and help me.
Okay.
Afternoon till night, the CPM union guys will try and help me. Because when you find yourself in love, you always have lots of people coming out.
That is right. And though I'm very sure those could have been exciting times as well, though there is risk, but an exciting time. Very good, sir. So it's a very interesting thing. I'm very sure when you write your memoir, you will give a chapter to it, at least the Telegram love that you did actually. Okay. Now, I would start with you being an astute reporter for the Indian Express, the then Indian Express. Now it is called the New Indian Express and things like that. Okay. And then you joining the IFS. Did you always fancy being a civil servant, or you were more favorable towards a position of a journalist? What was it, sir, at that point in time?
I know this is also a story linked to the previous story.
Yeah.
Which is that what had happened was I had gone to Delhi to do my MA in International Studies.
Okay.
And the reason I chose International Studies was because my undergraduate degree here in Maharajas College was political science.
Okay.
And within political science, I found International Studies the most interesting part. And at that point of time, JNU was, and even now perhaps, JNU in Delhi was the best place to go and study International Studies.
Indeed.
There were a few of my seniors from Maharajas who had gone. Yeah. So I had some example to follow. And once I went to JNU and I finished my MA in International Studies, or even while studying, it was already clear to me in my mind that I had to give the civil services a go.
Okay.
And within the civil services, it is the foreign service that I was most interested in,
yes,
being the logical culmination, the logical follow-up of my academic discipline.
Yes.
However, what happened was that most people, well, the natural course would have been for me to stay back in Delhi.
Yes.
And continue for an MPhil and then do the civil service exams.
Okay.
But in this particular case, what happened was that there was a big student agitation in JNU, after which admissions were cancelled for a year. So when I finished my MA, I had no option of continuing in JNU. And since I was always interested in law, and my father was also a lawyer, I thought I might as well come back to Cochin and join for law. It is while I was studying for law that more or less this decision to get married slowly matured and snowballed and gathered steam. And when I told my parents that I want to get married, my father challenged me and said, how can you even think of marriage when you don't have a job? So that led me to sort of pick up his challenge and say, okay, I want to see what job I can get as quickly as possible so that I can get married. And I started applying for everything under the sun.
Okay.
I applied to be a bank officer with NABARD. I applied to be a tea estate manager with the Tatas.
Okay.
I applied to the Oberoi to be a hotel manager.
All with the intention to get married
I could find.
Yes.
I applied. And by some luck and coincidence, around the same time,
yes,
the then editor of Indian Express here in Cochin, Mr. S.K. Anantharaman, contacted my father and said, look, there's lots happening in the Kerala High Court. I want somebody to cover the High Court in more detail. And I want someone with some background in law. And who can write English well. So my father was kind enough to tell me, look, here is an opening, even though he didn't like the idea of the marriage. But he said, look, here is an opening. Why don't you go meet the editor? I went and met the editor with my CV. Later, when I was leaving Indian Express, my editor told me it was a case of love at first sight. He took my CV, made a strong recommendation, sent it to the management in Chennai, and lo and behold, I got an appointment letter. So that is how I came into the Indian Express. And let me say that having joined I spent about 2.5 years as a journalist. The marriage still took some time because of the telegram love and the trunk call love. But I thoroughly enjoyed every moment I spent as a journalist, as a staff correspondent of the Indian Express here in Cochin. I recall coming for many KMA functions at that point of time. Though my diplomatic life has been 34 years, my 2.5 years of journalist life still is very fresh in my memory. And
I think even
I look forward
your love affair with the press continues, actually. Your love affair with the press continued during the Rashtrapati Bhavan times as well as now, because once you're back, we see a lot of you in the press, that very, very indication that, the press still holds you with a lot of affection and respect. We have a small analogy here. Our president, Madhav Chandran, he also had married somebody from very close to Darjeeling, that is actually Bengal. Okay, Sujata is a Bengali, so that again happened during their career times. Just a comparison, sir. Okay, then you come into Indian foreign service. I think even today, people, in spite of IAS, IPS, etc., even today, people still prefer to be going for the IFS first than any of the rest of the thing. So you chose the best of the best, and that was also a culmination of the studies that you have had as international studies that you did. Now, and you went through your assignments. I believe you have been in Beijing, you have been in UAE, you have been in US, and many places. Now, the Beijing Connect, will you be able to give us some good anecdotes at Beijing, sir? Because now the Beijing thing, China thing is really intriguing to many people here, Will you be able to give us some very good, some anecdotes about the Beijing times, sir?
Well, lots. I think I can go on and on about China.
Yes.
Because it is a country I know well, and it is a country I have to confess I like as a people. I may not like the politics, the government, but as a people, as a culture, as a civilization, I'm quite fond of China. And the first point I make in any discussion that I'm part of in China is that often Indians do not understand that the Chinese see us very differently from the way we see them. For us, unfortunately, and now with relations having deteriorated, things have taken an even worse turn. But for us, we carry with us the emotional and the mental baggage of 1962.
Yes.
I was born in 1960. Okay. But even as a young child, I remember people talking about, writing about how China betrayed Nehru. They stabbed us in the back. We used to have demonstrations against China. So till 1988 and Rajiv Gandhi's visit to China, our relations was virtually frozen. Relations started improving only post 1988.
Indeed.
So the reason I say that they see us differently is when I first went to China, I first went to Hong Kong, where I started learning the Chinese language from 1987 to 90. And my first foray into China was to visit and to stay in a Chinese university on a program organized by my Hong Kong university in 1988.
Yes.
And I was so pleasantly surprised because I was studying Chinese and I could speak a little bit of Chinese. I could make conversations. China was still opening up at that point of time. It was early days. There were still most people in gray and in blue. Most people were on cycles. It was a very different China from what it is today.
Today, yes, absolutely.
However, what I noticed is that whenever you say you are from India, the common man, the average person on the street, the farmer, the peasant, the worker, they had only good things to say about India. They had only warmth towards India. And this is because for them, the primary identification of India is as the land of Buddha. Buddhism over centuries has had such a deep influence on China, its culture, its philosophy, its thought, its arts, that influence can never be mitigated. In ancient China, India used to be known as Western Heaven because Buddha was born in India and it was to the west of China. And there are any number of stories, any number of myths, any number of music and dance creations where you can see the Indian influence. In every Buddhist temple in China, you can see an Indian influence. And today, at the height of the communist regime or the extreme communism that they followed during the Cultural Revolution, temples were destroyed, temples were closed down, nobody was permitted to have a religion. As different from that, now there is freedom to practice religion. And China has already become the largest Buddhist nation in the world by virtue of 300, 400 million Buddhist followers in that country. So that emotional connect for China with India remains, while for us, right from the beginning, it has been a case of political doubt, suspicion. Did they betray us? Why did we have the 1962 war? Now we have the additional angst of why did the conflict recently happen? Why did people have to die? How did it happen? So we are a very emotional people, and our approach to China is very emotional, while theirs is more based on history and culture. And anyway, the Chinese at any point of time are a far more pragmatic people. From the first visit to China till I left China, in fact, I served in Beijing twice, from 19 to 93 and 99 to 2002. Those were the 10 years that China changed completely. I just couldn't recognize the China I went back to the second time. And throughout, the one character of the Chinese people, which is available in some parts of India, but not across the board, is a thirst for growth, a hunger for growth, a hunger to do better. And to do better through this is music to your ears, through business, to economy, to commerce, to trade. I remember Mr. Sitaram Yechury, now CPM General Secretary, then a Politburo member, had visited India. And even a young student who was asked to be his license officer asked him, Mr. Yechury, can we do some business with India? Can we do some import or export? And Yechury was, of course, shocked, being a good Indian communist, for whom any kind of business, at least personal business, is anathema. So that was the spirit, and that continues to remain the spirit of the China. They are a highly, not just an industrial nation, an entrepreneurial nation.
And very hardworking people too, isn't it? Very hardworking people, are they?
No, hardworking, yes, they are. But so are we. It is not that if you go and look at the farmer toiling in the farms of India in the heat of Andhra or Bihar or Rajasthan or UP, who would say he is not hardworking? If you look at the working class in India, they are hardworking. Look at our people who go to the Gulf and work. They are hardworking. So hardworking, we are also hardworking. But the difference that I cite is that they have got their act together much better than we have got together. We have all the talent, we have all the resources, we have all the brains, we have the ability to work hard, provided we get the right incentives. We take pride in what we do. Sometimes some sections of our economy are absolutely callous and indifferent and do not respect the quality of what they do, while some sections of our economy are super efficient. They are better than the best anywhere that you can find in the world. So the Chinese have got their act together, and somehow through a certain historical process very different from us, and that will take time to elaborate. They have got the best of capitalism and the best of socialism. They established socialism vigorously, brought everyone to one level, assured them all food, shelter, clothing, basic infrastructure. And then they permitted capitalism to flourish. And the rich people got richer, and they got richer so fast that they pulled the engine of the economy with them, and the poor people also got much better. Within the last 30, 40 years, China has sort of 2-3 generations of China have seen prosperity of a kind they have never seen before, and a quality of life of a kind never seen before. While we in India sometimes, in many ways, got stuck with the problems of capitalism and the problems of socialism.
Socialism, yes.
We are neither capitalist nor socialist, and we've got the negative side of both in many ways and are struggling to overcome them.
It's a great observation, sir. In India, we were neither in capitalism nor in socialism, where they have had the best of both. Lovely observation. An academic question, just an academic and a personal academic question. You said you learned you learned Chinese language. What is how different is Mandarin from Cantonese, sir?
Well, Cantonese is a dialect of Chinese.
Yeah.
Mandarin is also the dialect which is predominantly spoken in northern part of China, but Mandarin has been adopted as the official spoken language. Since you raised this question, let me mention a crucial, again, comparing India and China. We need to keep in mind the fact that while China is also a very diverse country, 97% of Chinese belong to what is known as the Han Chinese race. They divide people amongst races. Unlike us, who divide people with language, religion,
and caste.
Region, and caste, of course. And out of this 97% Chinese, when it comes to the language, in 226 BC, the same time as Ashoka in India, the Chinese emperor decided to unify the written language. He unified the written language, he unified the currency, he unified the weights and measures. So from 226 BC till date, the same written language has evolved. And the spoken language has differed from region to region. And much before the Chinese Communist Party came in 1920s, when the Kuomintang came to power, Dr. Sun Yat-sen came to power, then itself Mandarin was adopted as the official spoken language. So in all of China today, in school, everybody learns Mandarin. At home, he has the freedom to speak his local dialect. With his people, he can speak his local dialect, but every single child learns Mandarin spoken and the same written Chinese language. Again, and that is the big difference in India.
Goes on to prove what you have said, that they have had their act together much earlier than what we had. You are saying 226 BC. Where they said, everyone will learn the language Mandarin. Yes, so, please go on. Yes.
And even today, we are coexisting with multiple languages. And we have English as a linked language. We have Hindi as a national language. We have regional languages in the states as official language. So administering India is at any time complex. Even more complex is reforming India and how we function. I said that we have not got our act together fully. Someone described reforming the governance of India, the administration of India, as redesigning an aeroplane while flying. So this is our situation. We started flying in 1947, maybe with the engine and sort of a shell handed over to us by the British. And we can't stop flying. We are continuing to fly. But even as we fly, we need to constantly improve, refine, and do better and better. And that has been the challenge which has held us back. And if one more crucial difference between China and India, you must remember, is that while China is also divided into provinces, into cities, into municipalities, regions, and they all have a fair degree of autonomy, when you have a one-party country, it is the same political party at the central government and all the way to the grassroots in the panchayat level or the village level. At the most important person, the most powerful person across the board, from the top to bottom, is the general secretary of that party. When the Politburo takes a decision in Beijing, that decision is immediately transmitted down from top to bottom to the most grassroots level. And those decisions are implemented. They are able to supervise. The people are not challenging the decision and saying, no, this is wrong. People are not going to the court and saying, but this violates something else. People are not saying this violates the articles of the Constitution, which divides powers between the center and the states and a concurrent list. So China has been a much more strong, united country historically,
Yes.
Also by virtue of a single communist party ruling it from the top, and the fact that they are a very authoritarian government which doesn't permit democratic dissents. And
yeah,
let
I
me
think
also,
there could be difference of opinion. Somebody could debate with you on this for hours together. But then you had got a lovely analogy of the plane being redesigned while flying. It's a great analogy that you have actually given. If you want to answer this, okay. There was the principles of India-China bhai was based on the principles of Panchasheel. What went wrong, sir, in your observation?
well, a lot. And there, in my view, it goes back to what I said earlier of us being a very emotional people while the Chinese being a very practical people. When I was first posted in the embassy in Beijing, I discovered a huge collection of old films division movies on Chao En-lai's visit to India and Nehru's visit to China. This was in the 50s and early 60s, before the war. And I saw, what struck me is that this whole business of Hindi Chini Bye Bye was only in India. When Chao En-lai came to India, we lined the streets with people. And they were all shouting Hindi Chini Bye Bye, Hindi Chini Bye Bye. When Nehru went to China, yes, people were lined in the streets, they all waved, they held up flags. But there was no Hindi Chini Bye Bye. It was, in fact, at a banquet hosted by the Chinese government, the communist government, for Nehru, there was ballroom dancing. And this again reflects the Chinese have had Western influence far more greater than us in many ways. Western ball. If you go to any Chinese street, village or town, there will be a public square where the Chinese come together to do ballroom dancing. This is unheard of in India because of our different cultural history.
Even today.
So the Chinese never emotionalized their relationship with India, while we emotionalized our relationship with China. No country, while in diplomatic verbiage, we may use the term bye bye and we are friends forever, eternally together, blah, blah. Any student of international relations will say that ultimately what matters is your interests. Do the interests of the two countries come together? Does my friendship with China suit my interests? It is not a relationship based on emotion, but it has to be a relationship based on pragmatic assessment of what I think is good for me and what I can get from you. And he is also making that pragmatic assessment vis-a-vis you. And when the two merge is when you actually have a good, strong, consolidated relationship. So we emotionalize the relationship. And then building on that highly emotional relationship, there was trouble within China. There was trouble in Tibet. The Chinese occupied Tibet. Dalai Lama ran away. When a person like Dalai Lama runs away from China and comes to India, by our tradition, by our background, the faith and the belief and the respect we have for Buddhism, we welcome Dalai Lama. We gave him asylum. The Chinese were not happy about it. The Dalai Lama set up a government in exile, which even now exists in India. So, not if how would India react if there was a government in exile of Kashmir in China,
in Beijing?
but we continued with that, and then on top of it, while we had this undemarcated, undefined border, which was left behind by the British, a series of discussions on the border issue did not go anywhere, and just as had happened recently. Due to public pressure, due to criticism in the parliament, including by people like Atal Bihari Vajpayee, the government decided to take very aggressive steps on the border and to move our forces and our soldiers up into heights where they had never been before, which was seen by the Chinese as an extremely aggressive step. And for us, the tragedy was that our soldiers were not prepared. They were not trained. They didn't have the equipment. And still we went ahead and took that wrong decision. And the Chinese, in the meantime, here again, we come to a difference between China and India. The Indian political leadership had won freedom through peaceful means, through argument, through debate, through public demonstrations, through agitation, through articles in British press and international media. The Chinese were a military army formed by the Communist Party, which brought them to power. Their entire leadership were military
Yes,
leaders.
PLA, yes.
And when India took an aggressive move, they read it in military terms and they decided it should have a military response.
Okay, okay.
So they did not show any understanding for the complexities of democratic politics within India, which necessitated Nehru to be seen as aggressive on the border, even when he really did not want to be aggressive and he did not want a war with.
So that led to them
teaching, making it was a political war to teach India a lesson rather than a war to conquer territory. And even now, the risk is because we are two different countries, because we are a democracy with different kinds of pressures, they are a communist party, and because now they are far, far more powerful than us. They see themselves as equal only to the US. Along with prosperity and success in many fields, their arrogance has also gone up. So the chances of a miscalculation, the chances of wrong steps or decisions leading to a war are very high. And that is why we need to de-escalate the conflict on our borders. We need to go back. We had from 1975 till 2019, there was not a single shot fired on the border. While we had pushing and shoving, nobody was killed. And we need to go back to that situation at least before we move on to trying to resolve the border dispute once and for all for good.
Good observation, but I don't know how much of this will be admitted by the current dispensation as far as advice is concerned. Now, before we switch gear and go to the Middle East, my request to the audience, I have already seen some questions popping up. Please do send your questions in the chat mode. I will read it out, identifying your name later. So let's come to let's come to the Arab world, because they were the Dalals of the world. They were the middlemen of the world, right? Positioned in between the East and the West, very rightly so. And your tenure there had been considered as a very high point of relation between UAE and India. Okay, UAE being the main leader that means the GCC and India to the extent we can say so. Would you be able to highlight some of those that period and some of those engagements that you have had there, sir?
Well, let me say the first and foremost lesson and learning. Just as I talked to you about the learnings I had from China. The first learning I had from my tenure in UAE when I went there was how little I knew about this country and about this people. Despite being a diplomat, despite coming from Kerala, despite being reasonably well educated and well read. So the Arab world, the Gulf Arab world, UAE in particular, was a huge discovery to me. And it was a very pleasant discovery, because we in India often tend to stereotype all of the Gulf with Saudi Arabia or with extremes of Wahhabism, which is completely wrong. Each country within the GCC has its own unique characteristics, and many of them are very liberal societies, liberal both in terms of their own practices as well as liberal to foreigners and to foreign religions. Oman and Bahrain traditionally are considered the countries most liberal and most friendly to India. UAE, Qatar and Kuwait come after that, and Saudi Arabia sadly comes the last, but even Saudi Arabia is changing. So the Arabs I met in UAE were a pleasant surprise. There are two, I would say, the elder generation and the younger generation. The elder generation of Arabs loved India. India, for them, when they were young and they grew up, the most important city close to them was Mumbai. Their parents and they went for education to Mumbai. They went for medical treatment to Mumbai. They went for shopping to Mumbai. They came for holidays to Mumbai to see the rains, because they don't get to see the monsoons the way we get to see them. And even now, women in that part of the world are far more comfortable coming to India on their holidays and their shopping expeditions than to going to the West, because they find that there is far greater acceptance in India of their cultural habits, of an abaya, of halal food or whatever, than they would get in the West. So the younger generation of the Arab world, the Gulf Arabs, with the coming of oil fuel prosperity, they all turned to the West. And they started going to UK and to the US for their education. for work, for business, for holidays, for entertainments. And in a way, they lost that connection their parents had within India. And also, their view of Indians was influenced by the large workforce we had there, which sadly, initially, it has changed a great deal. Yes. Initially was what one would call an ABCD.
Yes.
Ayah, butler, cook and driver. So they saw India and Indians through the prism of Ayah, butler, cook and driver. And therefore, there was a certain looking down. There was a certain arrogance. These people are here to work for us kind of philosophy.
Yes, yes.
But two things happened. Yeah. One, India's economic reforms post-91, India's growth on the world stage, India's growing acceptance across the world, India's success as an economy sent a strong message to them. Those who were Western focused suddenly started telling themselves, okay, if the US is taking India seriously, should we not take India seriously? if the whole world, if all of the Western world is saying the future is Asia, it is China and India, then China, yes, but China is still far away. India is next door to us.
Yes.
Should we not take India seriously? And if India has the best scientists, if we have the best IT engineers, if we have the best biotechnology firms, aren't there greater possibilities for collaboration? And in India, which is growing at 7% plus, with a huge market, with enormous demands for real estate, for infrastructure, aren't these wonderful business opportunities for companies in the Gulf, especially in the UAE, who have already created wonderful infrastructure in their own country, which is a small country. But their expertise and their experience, which they have done with the help of people from India, if they can bring back to India, the kind of profits they can make is huge. So this realization has gradually happened across the Gulf, both amongst Gulf businessmen as well as the Gulf political leadership. That is why you see the political leadership now transforming itself, and instead of a traditional Pakistan bias, now they are increasingly focused on India and what they can gain out of India. The Indian community within the Gulf countries have steadily grown. We far outnumber the local populations. There are some extremists, and we must keep in mind, there are some extremists who say this is a demographic bomb. Their leaders are making a big mistake. They don't need so many shopping malls. They don't need so many hotels. They don't need so many tourists. They don't need so many foreign workers. These foreign workers can overthrow their governments and take over one day. So you should start sending back people. This philosophy exists. But still, the leadership and the majority of the people continue to maintain an extremely positive assessment of India, of Indian people, and of Indian workers. And from that ABCD category, now they see Indians as smart engineers, smart finance professionals, smart managers who can help them bring their business to India and also conquer the rest of the world.
Oh, great. This UAE, sorry, your UAE expedition, I would just get to, because we have positive time. I think we could have gone on and on, because it is at least about 2-3 hours that we could have taken to complete this. But anyway, so Netherlands, okay, you were the envoy, you were the ambassador, okay. How did it get the name Netherlands? It was also called Holland. We also used to call it Holland, and we used to wonder at their football skills. You know, sir. I mean, football skills. Netherlands. Okay. How did Netherlands get its name, and how was your assignment? How interesting and how exciting was your assignment at Netherlands, sir?
Okay. First of all, a lot of people ask about the confusion between Ernakulam and Kochi, and Holland and Netherlands is to an extent similar.
Okay.
In reality, Holland is one region within Netherlands.
Okay.
There are two provinces, North Holland and South Holland.
Okay.
But these were the most prosperous provinces. Okay. These were the provinces which had the maximum population.
Yeah.
And it is from these provinces, predominantly, that the Dutch started their exploration of the world. The Dutch East India Company began its expansion overseas, including to India and to Kerala. So the capital city and the biggest commercial center, Amsterdam, is part of North Holland. The seat of government, The Hague, is part of South Holland. Rotterdam, the biggest port in all of Europe, is part of South Holland. So it is because that economic focus was in that area, from time immemorial, people started calling them the Holland people. I think in Malayalam we used to say Lendakar, coming from
Lendakar,
Holland.
yes.
Lendakar.
Even N.S. Madhavan, your counterpart, has written the Lendakar. There's a book also on the Lendakar, actually. Yes, sir. Go on, sir. Yes.
So Netherlands, the name is the more formal name, and it clearly comes from the geographical situation of the country, where it is a delta region. 3 major rivers of Europe flow into the sea in the Netherlands.
Yes.
And 1/3 of the country is below sea level.
Yes, great thing. Yes, I want to ask you. Yes, okay.
So the Netherlands is Kuttenad region magnified in many ways.
Okay.
But also the positive side of the negative side of a difficult geographical situation is they have had to deal with floods for centuries and centuries.
Yes.
They are because they are below the sea level, because they are close to the ocean, because the rivers are prone to flooding. They have suffered floods. They have dealt with floods. They have fought with floods for centuries. But their battle with water has also made them the world's best experts in dealing with problems of flooding and in dealing with various issues relating to the water. And more important, something which I keep saying people of Kerala should in particular learn, is water is in their consciousness. The oldest democratic bodies in the country were created as water boards, when people of a village would come together and then collectively decide what do they do to prevent floods, what kind of dam do they create, what kind of bund do they create, where does the money come from, how does everyone pitch in money, and who is elected as a leader. So this created one, democratic structures, leadership through elections, and also a philosophy of taking decisions by consensus, everybody coming together, discussing, debating, and then arriving at a decision. And then from then till today, even though they have built formidable defenses against water, they have excellent expertise against water, even now they say we must be ready to face a flood anytime, any day. With climate change, oceans are rising. All of Netherlands, it's an existential threat.
Yes.
So every child in the Netherlands is taught swimming mandatorily. And not just should the child learn how to swim, he should learn how to swim with full clothes and shoes on.
Oh, that's
because
great.
if a flood comes, you have no time to get into your swimming trunk. You should be able to swim, and you should be able to rescue others if you are a good swimmer.
Indeed.
In a state like Kerala with a huge coastal line, 40 rivers flowing into the ocean from the mountains. With our backwaters, with our lakes, have we really emphasized, or is it part of our philosophy that we are living so close to the water and we should know and understand the dynamics of water? Somehow we have divided ourselves into 2 sections, a small minority of fishermen who live off the water, who know the water, who understand the water, who deal with the water on a daily basis, and a large landlocked population, which doesn't even know the basics of swimming.
Indeed.
If we are living near rivers, we all go to the rivers for our view, we all go to the backwaters, maybe for a joyride on a boat. But God forbid that boat capsizes. Can we swim, escape? Can we save somebody else? So that consciousness about living next to water is badly needed in our state. And we too, like the rest of the world, must conclude that extreme climatic events are going to happen more and more with climate change.
We are seeing that happening.
There is either going to be floods. If we see that happening, 2018 was the biggest floods in 100 years, but 2019 and 2020 we still have. Today, I was being told that there are many parts, even now, it is like a mini floods. We have had the largest amount of rain in December, January for quite some time now.
Yesterday
and in many low-lying parts, water is coming into houses. So we need to understand why this is happening, how can we prevent it, what are the long-term measures, what are the precautions we should take, what are the mistakes we are making, and that comes from a consciousness that we are living next to water, and that consciousness infusing all our development activities, all our planning activities. We cannot build on floodplains. We cannot permit unrestricted construction close to rivers and water bodies.
Water bodies,
must have space to overflow if and when there is a flood. And I'm extremely happy to tell you that during my tenure in the Netherlands,
yes,
I'm very proud of the fact, while we have a lot of collaboration with the central government,
yes,
ultimately for things to happen at the local level, you need the state governments.
Yes, yeah.
And so irrespective of the fact that I'm a Malayali, I take great pride in the fact that some of the most important success we have been able to achieve has been in concrete collaboration with the state of Kerala, whereby we have been able to bring Dutch expertise to the service of the people and the government of Kerala. Thanks to the floods of 2018, after the floods of 2018, I first wrote an article in Malayalam Manorama on the lessons we can learn from the Dutch. And then I wrote a little book in English called What We Can Learn from the Dutch, Rebuilding Kerala Post-Floods 2018. In fact, the Malayalam version of this book is going to be released by the Chief Minister in the presence of Mr. Ramesh Chennithala, Leader of Opposition and former CM Ummachandi, next week in Trivandrum on the 12th.
Congratulations in advance on that, sir, actually. Yes.
Thank you. So, but after that book, I was able to persuade the Chief Minister to come on a visit to
We
Kerala.
have seen your photographs with the Chief Minister all around us. Yes, go ahead, sir.
And along with the Chief Secretary, along with the Water Resources Secretary.
Yes, yeah.
It persuades we from the time of the floods, we got Dutch technical expertise, Dutch technical experts to come and work with Kerala water engineers and the Kerala government to prepare an action plan for Kuttanad to develop a long-term disaster resilience plan.
Yes.
And with the help of these experts, we have created a room for the river project in the Pamba River on the model of what happens in the Netherlands with World Bank assistance.
Yes.
So money is also available, and it's part of a more comprehensive project. And a number of recommendations which ensued at the time are being implemented one by one. So I see this as a big success.
So I think you have left behind your legacy as far as this is concerned, in the sense that you have come back, but then your efforts and endeavor that you've done will be very well remembered for a long time to come. I really like the way that you put it, the water being part of the consciousness, or I'll say water being part of the DNA and water being part of that culture. And still we haven't learned that yet, actually. I think it's a very sad understanding or sad state of affairs as far as we are concerned. Sir, we'll quickly come to your presidential, your time with the president, because of the paucity again of time. So, see, you have been the press secretary of one of the most astute politician, one of the highest level of a scholar. Okay, Pranab or Pranab Kumar Mukherjee. Okay, now of course his book, The Presidential Years, is now getting out. The daughter and the son have not decided as to whether it should come out or not. And there are some of the excerpts that actually started coming out in the newspapers, etc. And we find this very interesting about him. Sir, I think, I'm sure somebody who had seen our president at very close quarters and have been able to work with him and brought in those changes with him, like, your outreach program, Rashtrapati Bhavan outreach program, your brainchild, that it's done wonderfully well. Will you be able to give us some input about Pranab Da and the president of the late Pranab Da? We really remember him with a lot of love and affection and respect. Will you be able to give us inputs on your work with Pranab Da, sir?
Okay, let me divide this into two sets of comments. One about Pranab Da and one set about Rashtrapati Bhavan.
Yes.
On Pranab Da, I would say that he was an extraordinary man, a man of a kind never seen in contemporary politics.
Okay.
He was very diminutive in his stature.
Yes.
But he was giant as an intellectual and a giant in his wisdom, his statesmanship, his understanding of politics, and his capacity for hard work. What always struck me about Pranab Da is what a wonderful human being he was, despite all the achievements he had. When I first met him, he was foreign minister, but already he had been defense minister, foreign minister, commerce minister, deputy chairman, planning commission. There's no important portfolio he had not had. He has always been described. He has been described as the best prime minister we never had.
Yeah, yes.
But so despite all these achievements, he was a wonderful human being.
Yes.
But beyond the innate good human capacity, he was a man who immensely loved India and was firmly committed to the core ideals of our constitution.
Okay.
He was a man who had studied the freedom movement, the life of Nehru as a parliamentarian. He says, it is the parliament who made me what I was. He had spent over 50 years in the parliament. And nobody had spent more time than him in parliament when he left the parliament. And he was, like Nehru, a passionate believer in democracy. And he believed that Indian elections, Indian democratic process had truly equalized our people, given everybody voice, given everybody a right. And at the same time, he was immensely committed to India's pluralism, India's multiculturalism.
Yes.
I remember once he was a very devout Hindu, but he was never orthodox. And there was a debate in Parliament where I believe in one of the NCRT textbooks, there was a reference to Soma and Sura.
Yeah.
And some members of Parliament objected to this as an insult to Indian history and culture and religion. And Pranab Mukherjee, though he was not education minister, stood up and quoted verses from the Chandi part, which is recited during Durga Puja, which he himself recites every year when he goes to his village to do puja, to say that the manner in which Durga has been described in the Chandi part, from the 18th century, there has been debate among scholars in Bengal as to whether she was drunk when she killed the Asura, Mahishasura, or not, because the eyes were bulging, face had turned red. She was doing this wild Tandava, and she had a bowl in her arm, which was probably filled with Sura. So he, while he was extremely spiritual and religious, he was a temple goer, he would never miss his Durga Puja. He was also modern. He was liberal in his outlook. He was not scandalized by any perceived insult to Indian religion or Indian tradition or Indian culture. His vision was not narrow. And about Durga's statue itself, he has often remarked and saying, look, there is a rat and a snake which coexist within one statue. If you look at that statue of Durga, you would see Indian multiculturalism in practice. And he felt very hurt when that multiculturalism was threatened. And he thought it was his prime duty as the President of India to defend and to protect the Constitution. He would say that every other elected officer in India swears to abide by the Constitution. It is the President of India alone who swears to protect and defend the Constitution. And so his primary responsibility is that. If you look at his political life, it is in a way wonderful that he was a small village boy from North Bengal. He did not grow up in Calcutta. He did not go to Presidency College or any of the elite educational institutions. He studied in a government school. His father was a freedom fighter. He started cycling to work in a local college. From there, he rose to the high. As a child, he has narrated stories of how he had to walk miles to school. And there would be ditches and there would be paddy fields filled with water through which he had to wade through. And he would take off his school uniform, put it on his head, wade through,
and then go
on his school uniform, and then go. So from those situations, he rose to the highest office in the country, and that is a reflection of the greatness of India, that it does provide people of such background the opportunity to rise to the highest.
Absolutely.
But on the other hand, he was a terribly unlucky person. Because when Indira Gandhi died, he was the senior most member of the cabinet. As per previous practice, when Nehru died, Gulzarlal Nanda became interim prime minister. And then Shastri was later elected. He should have been prime minister, but that did not happen. When Rajiv Gandhi died, the opportunity went to Narasimha Rao. By that time, he was a little distance from the party. And then when the Congress won, and Mrs. Gandhi had to choose between Manmohan Singh and Pranab Mukherjee, once again, she opted to choose for Manmohan Singh.
It is.
And till the end, what is referred in the recent volume of memoirs which has come out, where many political analysts in Delhi believe that instead of sending Pranab Mukherjee to the Rashtrapati Bhavan, if Manmohan Singh had become president and Pranab Mukherjee had become prime minister or leader of the Congress in the parliament and led the election campaign. We do not know if the ascent of Prime Minister Modi to power could have been stopped because a lot had happened by then, but at least the Congress would have had a much better presence and strength and role within the parliament, because you could not have thought of a more able parliamentarian than
Pranab Da. Absolutely. What about sir? What about the Rashtrapati Bhavan? Yeah. You said the question was put into two.
I don't know how much time we have.
Maybe we could do it in the next 5 minutes time, so that questions are there. Sir. Lots of people. I see lots of questions here. Actually, yes.
The Rashtrapati Bhavan is important because what happened was that when Pranab Mukherjee moved to Rashtrapati Bhavan, there was a whole team of us who were formerly with him in the Ministry of Finance. We went there.
Yes.
And this is a matter on which I feel strongly.
Yes.
The Rashtrapati Bhavan, in many ways, it has had been till then blindly following a British legacy.
Yes,
and practices and traditions set by the British Viceroy.
Okay.
Than truly become the representative of the spirit of a new independent India.
Yes.
A president who comes from the people.
Yeah.
So our biggest effort was to democratize and open up the Rashtrapati Bhavan.
Okay.
Pranab Mukherjee believed, and we all felt, that the Rashtrapati Bhavan belongs to the people. It is not something where the common man should be kept away in the name of security, in the name of protecting the building, in the name of heritage or whatever. Every Indian citizen should have a right to come into the Rashtrapati Bhavan, to see the building, to admire its beauty, to understand the philosophy behind its construction. So we started for the first time tours for the public, where 3 to 4 days in a week, the people could come and see the entire building and learn its history. We started a large number of museums where people could come and know the history of all presidencies since independence and how we won independence. We started a series of publications educating people on different aspects of Rashtrapati Bhavan. We started a change of guard ceremony every week where people could walk in with booking because numbers had to be limited and enjoy the president's bodyguard in all their regalia doing a little change of guard ceremony like we see anywhere in the world. And we started a series of programs called Artist in Residence, Writer in Residence. The most eminent writers, the most eminent artists were invited to come and stay in the Rashtrapati Bhavan and to write, to create, to use the beautiful locales as a spur to their creativity. Farmers were invited, students were invited, teachers were invited. Because Pranab Mukherjee himself was a teacher, he had a special passion for teachers and for students. They were invited to come and live in the campus. We thought India needs to encourage innovation. So people who do grassroots innovations were invited to come and stay in the Rashtrapati Bhavan to meet with the president, to interact with him. So in this manner, a series of reforms were undertaken. And most important of all, in fact, all the governors cribbed. But Pranab Mukherjee issued, if I can take credit amongst this audience, on my recommendation, orders to everyone saying a president or a governor should not be called His Excellency. His Excellency is a term which is used in diplomatic practice as a foreign ambassador. You refer to him as His Excellency. A foreign ambassador can refer to the president as His Excellency. But when an Indian citizen talks about the president, he's your own man. He's one amongst you who has risen to the highest office. So, Mr. President.
Mr. President, great. Oh, that is a lot of democratization in that actually.
Instructions were issued to all the governors saying, stop this business of His Excellency. and then many governors cribbed and said, we have been waiting all our lives to be called His Excellency. Why is the president spoiling our fun?
The president spoiled their ego.
Sure many people have reverted back. Because I know just now, I think somebody was saying, respectful mayor, worshipful mayor. Now, where do these terms come from? Indeed. He is one amongst us. Yes, he is the sort of the father of the city, we can say. He's the man responsible for all our welfare. But Mr. Mayor is more than enough. He's no more respectable nor worshipful than any one of us in this group, in this audience.
Sir, I'll take questions now because we have spoken. Sir, I really feel unhappy that it is an incomplete interview. I mean, I think it should have gone on for about 2 to 3 hours because such a wealth of information, knowledge, observation, etc., that is coming from you, and I'm indeed enamored by your statecraft of putting that actually across. But then we have to abide by the time as well as take some questions. So I'll just straight away go to my chat mode and take some questions for you to answer. Okay. Here this question says, my name is Vinay. Question to Mr. Venu. During your stint in Beijing, did you by any chance come across reference to any treaty signed by the Maharaja of Cochin, agreeing to a protectorate of Ming dynasty. Oh, my goodness, oh, it's a pretty dated thing. Would you be able to give an answer to that, sir?
No. Honestly, while I have studied Chinese history and Indian history, and I am aware of a lot of connections from the Buddhist period.
Yeah.
This particular reference is something I've not come across. I'm not ruling it out, but I would just say that we must, if China is our most important neighbor, we must study and we must learn China much, much more. So there could be such connections. I'm aware when I did my second book on Netherlands, India and the Netherlands past, present and future, I was given access to the Royal Archives. And there they produced a letter written by Shaktan Tamburan of Cochin to the King of Netherlands, one side in Dutch, one side in Malayalam, requesting Dutch support in his out of fear that Tipu Sultan will invade Cochin, and asking for arms and army and ships and whatnot. So I don't know if there was a Kochi Raja ever reached out to the Ming Emperor like that. There was a stronger connection with the Dutch. I think the Chinese were not that strong at that period, but it deserves to be studied. There is a lot more that we need to know about the Chinese connections that Kerala has and Kerala's connections with China.
Okay. Another question from Shashidhar and Praveen. Very insightful and impartial view, sir. I wanted to ask both the countries, India and China, have come a long way now. Is it possible for both the countries to coexist now? If so, what would be the way forward? If not, what should India do?
I think the two countries are coexisting.
Yes,
both of us have no option but to coexist.
Yes.
For both of us, each other's welfare is essential if we have to improve. If China descends into chaos or turmoil of the manner of in Afghanistan or even in Pakistan, you will only have more trouble on your border. You want a strong, stable China, and China wants a strong, stable India. India doesn't want a China which is an enemy. China doesn't want an India which is an enemy. And if the future of the world is going to be that of Asia, we are going to have to work together, collaborate, and partner in many areas and many fields. So
do you see that happening? Do you see such a possibility, given the chance that we are now at?
We diplomats are eternal optimists.
Okay.
Otherwise, we have nothing to do. We hand over policy and government to the generals and say, go fight a war. So certainly it is possible, but it is going to take a lot of work. A lot of damage has to be done. New beginnings have to be made. And we need to stress on the core and the cardinal, not showy, flashy media events.
Or rhetoric.
But soft, quiet, serious, detailed discussions and understanding of what is it that is bothering them, what is it that we can do to address it, an explanation of what is it that bothers us and where our sensitivities lie, and what we will be willing to agree and what we will not be willing to agree. So I certainly believe a brighter future is possible, but it requires a lot more patience, persistence, and hard work.
Hard work, okay. Question from Tamare Selvi. She's asking, India as a country is young. India as a culture is quite old. How efficient is India in international relations? Does cultural relationship play a role in influencing or building relationship with other nations?
Cultural relationships do play a role in building and influencing your relations with other countries, but they need not always be positive. They can be positive and they can be negative in many ways. You see, I don't know, there are several examples. If we just take our neighborhood, for example, India's affinities traditionally in Sri Lanka have lied with the Tamils. And the Tamils ran an insurrection movement against the Sinhalese dominated government. So the Sinhalese viewed us with great suspicion. You could have a cultural link, but that cultural link need not always work in a positive way. The people in Bangladesh and the people of West Bengal are essentially of the same stock.
Absolutely.
But because they are of the same stock, they fight for their interests vigorously. When it comes to sharing of waters of Ganga, the rest of India may take a very liberal approach with Bangladesh, but West Bengal says, no, our people, our farmers, Calcutta port is extremely important.
That's right. I understand.
If you take the West, the Punjabis on this side of the border and the Punjabis on the Pakistan side of the border normally tend to get along extremely well. If there's a South Indian sitting with a Pakistani Punjabi and an Indian Punjabi, he will feel he's the foreigner and they belong to the same.
Yes.
But yet, that bonhomie, now it is good that we managed to open a corridor to Kartarpur Sahib and make some incremental progress, but that has not prevented or that has not reduced our tensions with Pakistan.
Yes, indeed.
And when the Khalistani movement was at its height, Pakistan was very active in supporting the Khalistani movement and using it to create trouble in India. Nepal, similarly, Nepal is a Hindu kingdom.
Yes.
But that doesn't automatically mean that Nepal will support everything that India says.
Indeed.
In many ways, a Buddhist Bhutan has supported us much more. But even there, we have to, while the culture is part of soft diplomacy, yoga is popular across the world. Indian food is popular across the world. Indian cinema is popular across the world.
Including China. Dangal has scored 2,000 crore.
Amir Khan.
Amir Khan, yes.
Indian writing is popular across the world. Arundhati Roy. You find foreigners who have no connection to India talk about Arundhati Roy and her writings. But this is all soft power.
Yes.
And they don't easily translate into hard power.
I understand.
You see, look at the US. The US has the greatest soft power anywhere in the world. Who doesn't watch Hollywood? Who doesn't eat McDonald's? Who doesn't go to a Kentucky Fried Chicken? But that doesn't mean we all support US policies. Are you happy with what Trump is doing or what many of the policy steps that the US has taken? So the culture creates an atmosphere and an environment. We must use it wherever it is to our advantage. But we must use it carefully with sensitivity so that we don't come across as somebody very arrogant. We don't say we created everything in the world. We are the smartest. We are the brightest. All of you owe it to us. You are there because of us. So that can create problems. Often in countries where there are big Indian communities, the Gulf, for example, but even in places like Fiji or Mauritius.
Yes, it is.
If India is seen as having an overwhelming presence, that works negatively with all the other minorities. And we should leave them to handle their domestic politics.
Yes. Very well said. I think it's a lot of, in the last 2 minutes, whatever you said, I think, our dispensation and our people also need to understand that very well. And then better, they would be able to do things better. This question is from Balkrishnan. He's our vice president too. He says, sir, what is your views on Israel-UAE peace deal? They are traditional and emotional enemies. What is or is it only a political game? He's asking.
Well, any peace deal is a good deal.
Yes. Okay.
And any improvement in relations is a good thing.
Yes.
Israel exists. To try and pretend Israel doesn't exist is meaningless.
Yes.
When I used to live in Dubai, I went on a holiday to Palestine and to Israel. And I had to get a separate passport made.
Oh my!
Because so that I would not get into trouble when I came back into UAE. Because there was an Israeli stamp on it, and that kind of thing is completely ridiculous. Some of the old timers would remember once upon a time, because of what happened in Goa, all our passports used to have a seal saying not valid for Portugal.
Portugal, yes.
And I think there were one or two exceptions like that for a variety of reasons. So peace, any kind of improvement relations is good. But if it happens at the cost of Palestine, it is a crime.
Yes,
and that should never happen. You need to study to understand the issue of Palestine. People from Zionists from all over the world landed there and said, historically, this territory belongs to us, and then took over and created their country with the support of Western forces. When Israel was created, India voted against Israel.
Against Israel, yes. Even lately, very late, at least about 10 years back.
The original formation of Israel we opposed. Because the philosophy, the logic of that formation was identical to the formation of Pakistan. When Jinnah and the Muslim League argued that the Muslims would not be safe in India under the Congress or in a multinational, multicultural country, because India was a Hindu majority country, the Congress vehemently opposed it and said this is not correct. Muslims have lived here for centuries, they can always live. The Muslim League argued we want a country for the pure, the land of the pure. For Muslims, we want a separate country. And that is how they, despite the unwillingness of the Congress and the national movement leaders, they fought and they extracted. Similarly, Israel believes in a country for the Jewish religion.
Yes, it is.
While there is a big Arab minority there, the Arab minority is treated as subordinates. They are not
subordinates.
And Palestine is what used to be Palestine has been, portions of it has been forcibly taken away by Israel, and even then more settlements are being created within Palestine.
Yes.
The majority of the world has created or has accepted Palestine as an independent state.
Indeed.
But it should be an equal state with Israel, and between Palestine and Israel there should be peace, and there should be a resolution of the disputes. There should be a withdrawal of the settlers.
Yes.
Only then can that problem be solved. And till now, the UAE and many Arab nations tried to impose sanctions and not have relations, hoping for a Palestinian deal.
Yes.
Egypt and Jordan were the first to establish relations with Israel.
Yes, it is.
Now UAE and others are following.
But
still, the Palestinian problem remains unresolved. That priority should not be forgotten, and the problem of Palestine should be resolved in accordance with UN resolutions, in accordance with what the international community has collectively decided as the best way forward, and not on the basis of the whims and fancies of leadership of the US.
Okay. Yeah, very well. So, I mean, not at the cost of Palestine. Absolutely. That's about actually. Yes. So I'll take it as a last question because of the time. This is from Mr. Bahura, who is a GM HR of Petronet LNG. He's asking, looking at the present and the future, what is your advice to students, professionals and entrepreneurs, politicians and bureaucrats to make India a global leader? It's a generic question, but all are included in that. So what's your advice?
Well, I would say, number one, let us be modest.
Yes.
Let us be proud of what we have achieved till date.
Yes.
I think there is much that we can be proud of.
Yes.
But let us also be conscious that we still have a long way to go.
Okay.
The need of the hour is to learn to work together, to come together, to devise solutions that are most suited to our circumstances. Not to be emotional, but to be pragmatic in the finding of these solutions, and to work hard as much as possible. I do not believe in this quest for world leadership or for India to be number one on the high table. I think our priority should be building infrastructure, ensuring clean water, clean air, disposal of our municipal waste. We must focus on eliminating poverty in the country, in ensuring that health and education reaches every corner of our country, that in providing jobs to our young people and in skilling them in a manner that they can take advantage of the knowledge economy of the 21st century. The Chinese, throughout their economic reform program, their philosophy was bide your time. Focus yourself on building your internal economy. The world will automatically accept you, respect you, and recognize you when your economy arrives. I think this exactly should be our philosophy too. Our challenges are internal, our problems are internal. We must focus on getting our act together. And more than anything else, we must remember that social harmony, that consolidation of our democratic character, our freedom, our multicultural nature, our pluralism. These are our biggest strength. This is what the world respects us for. And this we should compromise and sacrifice at no cost. And this requires eternal vigilance as a democracy. We must constantly build on it. We must improve ourselves. We must strengthen our democratic foundations and our secular and our plural foundations.
Very well said, sir. Actually, I think, I do deem it as one of my best moments that I had spent on my learnings. Actually, I'm so grateful to you for that. As I said, I'm a little unhappy because I could have taken this conversation to another 1 hour easily, taking all the juices out of you. Anyway, we are not going to leave you like this. We'll again come back to you to get you back to KMA to talk about that. So that is one. I understand that you are now actually going to the academia areas. Actually, after maybe you're looking at I don't know. I call it second inning or third inning or fourth inning, or maybe a third inning happening at the academia. All the very best to you. And I hand over the proceedings to President Madhav. Madhav, all yours.
Thank you so much. And what a session it was. Going through China to the Rashtrapati and to the Dutch, and then coming back with a wonderful, wonderful final, hit which you made. The statements which you made about how India can become great, not at the top of the table, but in different ways. What an eloquence with which you actually delivered all those statements. It is wonderful. I'm sure all those who are present here, we were touching around 120 at a point of time, and still we have 90 people left behind in this room. That shows the kind of engrossing session which we had. I'm ever thankful to you, sir, for this wonderful, wonderful session which you just delivered. And as SR rightly said, it's one of the most memorable sessions which we had. And we are so thankful that you're going to be in Kerala, in Cochin in particular.
May not be in Cochin, but then he's in India.
2-3 days
No,
back.
no, I hope to spend more and more time in Cochin.
Okay.
Wonderful.
My immediate plans are not final, but I do have a invitation from a university near Delhi to teach from February.
But still, we'll pull you down.
You will see more and more of me in Cochin, and I will be available to you in Cochin through online means or other means. And I look forward to meeting each one of you individually.
We'll do that, sir. And let me tell you, when we had this session with the first citizen, whether it's respectful or Mr. Mayor of Cochin a couple of days back, we were referring to your session, which is coming up in the next 2 days' time. And he said, I'm looking forward to meeting him to see how best we can actually utilize his expertise and experience in finding a solution to the waterlogging and other problems, which is, plaguing Kochi. And of course, Kerala in particular, you mentioned it very clearly that about the flood situations and how well we got to be geared up for such kind of calamities rather than going and firefighting at the point of the tragedy when it strikes. Thank you so much, sir. It was really, really an insightful thing. And you taught us one point when we all go around and slam China for all bad things. You actually quoted all the good things of China and asked us to actually imbibe those values rather than being emotional and going forward and fight it out there. That is what really, really wonderful. And thank you so much for that. Before I hand it over to our Vice President, Mr. A. Balakrishnan, to propose the formal vote of thanks, let me remind the crowd sitting here, we have a session coming up on 14th, which is a registered session in the sense you have to make a prior registration for a masterclass on digital marketing, which is going to happen on 14th of January, which is going to be done by an expert, Ms. Aarti Srinath from Bangalore, Inception Business Services. She's going to take a class on digital growth and the marketing aspects of it. So please go and register. The notices and the invitations have been circulated to all the members and is floating around in the social media. Please look at that link and go and register yourself before the vote of thanks by A. Balakrishnan. Let me tell you that we have got a series of programs lined up, including the Management Week, which is coming up in the month of February. A series of programs in the sense a CEO Summit is coming up, Digital Summit is coming up. We have a CSR Conclave coming up. So a lot of action, even though we have pandemic times and the lockdown times going on without much physical activity, but we'll keep you engaged with very, very meaningful programs in the coming weeks. So now it's time for vote of thanks by Vice President A. Balakrishnan.
Good evening. President Mr. Madhav Chandran, Honorable Guest Venu, Rajamony, IFS retired, Program Chair SR Nair, MC members, my dear friends, and KMA members, students. At the outset, we are extremely grateful, sir, for your presence and your time spent and wisdom shared with us. In fact, I really wanted to say a couple of things. I am also chairman of the editorial board of KMA News magazine. I have already written with taking a permission from Mr. Balendran, your email ID. I already sent a request to you to write about your experience, especially Dutch experience. So probably we can even dedicate an edition for sharing your experience and suggestions for the improvement of Cochin city. Like President said, Mayor also want a lot of ideas on the improvement, especially on a clean city, healthy city, and your experience in Netherlands, especially the Dutch experience, would be helpful for us. Second request is absolutely personal, which I made to Mr. Balachandran. When you have time, I really wanted to take you to my village, which is an Upper Kutanad village.
Okay.
Pleasure.
Bala is doing ഓണത്തിനിടയിൽ പുട്ടുകച്ചവടം നടത്തുകയാണ്. Okay.
No, then he said, okay, let me try. So I am also personally requesting you to, when I know that you are settling, and but at your convenience, I really wanted to introduce you to my panchayat, the leaders of the panchayat, and what exactly, because we suffered a lot in 2018 flood, and the maximum number of death declared in my village. So that is where actually we really want, really, and it is not an end. I don't think 2018 will not repeat. It can come anytime. So this is something, a personal request. Again, on extracting wisdom from an intellectual is not a joke. So thank you, SR. Thank you, SR, for leading this wonderful conversation. And as you said, it can take another 2 more hours. For example, his book on Ganges cleaning and his suggestion, I still remember Indian Express put in detail what all we can do for cleaning and what all we can learn from Netherlands. So those things, actually, I think probably we can spend a day. That is what we had in 1 hour. Thank you very much, sir. Thanks a lot. And I also thank all the MC members and especially President for arranging this wonderful session, and all the students, KMA members, for assembling this particular session. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, ABK, and a special thanks to the person who interacted so animatedly with Sri Rajamony, past President SR Nair too, and all of you. Thank you so much for being such an attentive audience and being there all throughout the session till the end. And it was wonderful. We all enjoyed putting this together. I'm sure you also enjoyed being here and listening to this maestro of diplomacy. I learned the word diplomatic from this. That's the way he spoke about everything was diplomatic. And this is a memento which is specially curated by KMA. The live presence of yourself here with us today. This will reach you in a day or two, sir. A physical one, not a virtual one. This is a photograph of the memento which is going to be sent across to your residence, the KMA memento. Thank you so much once again, sir, and thank you all for being here. And those who are in office still, please go home safe and be safe and be healthy. And let us all look forward to more